Hey everybody, great to be with you here at ETHDenver. Thanks for coming to join me and Josh here as we explore Josh's journey from being a Degen to being a Regen. Just give Josh a second to get his buff corn settled. Awesome.
Thank you. Oh, this is a great turnout. I didn't expect so many people to be here.
Awesome. So, Josh, I noticed you rolled up to the event today on a scooter, uh, and I understand your professional history prior to getting involved in Web3 involves some ride-sharing stuff. So, I'm curious what first attracted you from the Web2 corporate world to get involved in Web3. How you first heard about blockchain technology.
A good question. Thank you. So I was working at Lyft in the driver growth and onboarding department. I was the deputy to the East Coast, and we were responsible for basically beating Uber to IPO. 30 major markets, taking us from 5% market share to 35% market share. And when the IPO happened, the drivers and the passengers basically got nothing. And this is in the time, I don't know if you guys remember, like Coinbase, you could buy three things. It was like Bitcoin, Litecoin, and ETH. But there was a wide world out there, and I was in rideshare, and I started to get into tokens, and I met this guy, Tommy, who was building Chaser, a decentralized rideshare out of Austin, and I sent him a message and was like, the rideshare stuff's not going to work, and he's like, but you don't really know much about crypto. You should come help us out. So we started writing this white paper, and it actually ended up becoming a white paper on why decentralized rideshare doesn't work. And that was 8 years ago. We still don't have decentralized rideshare. But a shout out to Tommy. He's still a serial entrepreneur. He's got a taco truck in Austin, El Borracho Tacos, and they're trying to ICO. So always trying to push the envelope.
Yeah. So, when you first heard about crypto and blockchain, it sounds like it was an exciting idea, but maybe wasn't quite ready for prime time. When did you see a professional opportunity to jump into this and get involved in a project?
I met this excellent guy, Jacob, who was working on Panvala at Consensus at the time. And when we finished this white paper, I sent it to him, and his feedback was, so you clearly know a lot about rideshare, but you don't seem to know anything about crypto. Very diplomatic. He recommended I take a Consensus Academy blockchain essentials course. And so when Lyft finally IPO'd and they turned to us and said, your department's not allowed to exist anymore, you can find another job at the company or you can fuck off. We were talking about things, and I mentioned that, and that I'd finished the Consensus Academy class. He goes, I've recommended this to hundreds, thousands of people. You're the only one who's ever completed it and come back and talked about it. You should come work with us at Consensus. The things that you're complaining about with Lyft, we on Ethereum can fix these things, where the people who create people who create value in a network can own the network, and that's what we're building here. And this was 2018, 19, very early. Uniswap barely didn't exist, or just launched, and we didn't see a path for any of this stuff. A lot of people saw a great path. I didn't see it, and that was my entrance into the world of crypto.
Yeah. And so after your time at Consensus, what were some of the projects that excited you the most, that made you feel energized about being involved in Web3 and were solving real problems? For instance, I know we're both employee members at Opolis, and I think you got involved there around the same time.
Yeah. So, funny story actually. 6 months after I had joined Consensus, they went through one of their 20% layoffs across the board, and I was on a team that was spinning out, and I decided not to go with. And I was going to go back to Lyft to do bikes and scooters, and everyone was like, no, don't do that. Go to ETHDenver. You will find another job. And I roll up to ETHDenver, and I got my Cobra packet. Americans will understand this. People who are not American will not get this at all. It's where you get your insurance, but you have to pay full price for what your employer was sponsoring. And so I get this basically bill that says if you want insurance premiums, not even care premiums, you have to spend $2,400 a month. And so I walked around ETHDenver for the first few days going, has anybody solved like Web3 healthcare? And every single person was like, have you talked to John and the Opolis team? And I went over to the booth and I met this guy, Adam, who's the CTO, and Eddie, and Will. And I didn't actually get to meet John because he was running around. If you guys don't know, he's the founder of ETHDenver. And it is very hard to like try to just get to meet him at the thing. And we set up a meeting, and I ended up working for Opolis and becoming a steward of ETHDenver.
So this was 5, 7 years ago now. The industry's changed a lot, but in other ways, things haven't changed that much. I'm curious if there's any patterns or trends that you saw back then that you still see the industry struggling with, or promises that were made back then that haven't quite been brought to fulfillment now.
Have you read Geeks, Mops, and Sociopaths?
Yeah, but why don't you share for the class?
Raise your hand. Have any of you guys read Geeks, Mops, and Sociopaths? All right, I do. I share it prolifically. It's a chapter from a book, but it talks about how subcultures evolve, and there's geeks at the center of any culture. So, like, the older members of the audience may remember, like, Star Wars when it came out in the 70s, 80s, and end of the 70s. It wasn't cool. Like, we, as younger, were like, oh, Star Wars is great. But at the time, it was only for nerds. And this is an example of something that successfully broke out of being a niche subculture thing and became like mass adoption, became part of the mainstream. And it wasn't I think also like music is another one that applies. Have you ever like found a song you love and then you hear it on the radio and you're like, oh, that's not cool anymore because now other people know about it? This is the same concept. But so we've got amazing geeks in Ethereum and crypto and so many great BUIDLers here, right? But the pattern that I've seen repeat constantly is the sociopaths just keep kicking our ass. They're kicking the geeks' ass. So you've got geeks, and they're like the builders, and then you've got mops, which are the members of the public, or like actually a mop that gets swept around, where they follow these trends. And the goal of the sociopaths is to come in and monetize the mops and extract as much value as possible from these members of the public. And if that sounds familiar, it's because we've been going through it like over and over and over. It's a Mark Twain, like history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
And so it sounds like you started out this journey pursuing some solutions to problems you face in the real world, in the corporate world. But we're here at the Year of the Regenerates at ETHDenver, and I'm curious to understand more about how you saw your own mindset shift toward regeneration, toward projects that could have a positive impact. Are there any projects that you worked on back in the day that you want to share about?
Yeah, this is a great example. So anyone who's around for DeFi Summer, it was this amazing boom of all these different things you could do on chain, but it was just basically gambling. We were gambling like food tokens, but it was like, oh, ape into these smart contracts. This is DeFi Summer. It was fantastic, but it was very PvP, and it was like similar to now where people will tweet an idea. But they don't share the contract address, and it's like, oh, I got to find out what that is. It's just gambling, incentivizing gambling, using like FOMO psychological mechanics to try to get people to ape into things. And DeFi Summer was great, and then it led into NFTs, and there was a group of folks, mostly out of Raid Guild, who we came together and we're like, the NFT entire ecosystem is just trash. Like they're making 10,000 copies of something, changing it into skin, and it's selling for millions of dollars. We should do the same thing, except for we're going to say publicly we're going to give away 80% of all of it to public goods. So we partnered with Gitcoin and Giveth and RIP Medical Debt and Bankless DAO to raise about $500,000, and we gave it away. And RIP Medical Debt is like a debt collection agency where they buy medical debt at pennies on the dollar, and then they send the family, a letter saying, we bought your debt and we've waived it, like you're in the clear. And we did that for about 5,000 families who got a letter that said, your medical debt was wiped by an NFT project on the Ethereum blockchain. And that was like in the hype and like Jimmy Fallon and an ape and all this crazy celebrity bullshit. These families' first experience with NFTs was an NFT wiped my debt. And that was the first like using degenerate mechanisms to do regenerative things that we did.
Yeah, and picking on that same thread, it's a really interesting use case where I saw this mania, excitement, and an opportunity to turn that mania toward a positive outcome. So I'm curious to understand more, what does being a regen mean to you?
What a prescient question, Marcus. To me, regen is about when you look at an economy or an environment or a industry, whether the thing that is being built, the thing that's being worked on, the whatever, is it adding value in a way that's additive to a flywheel that the rest of the ecosystem can benefit from, versus is it being extractive? It's like if a lot of money is being taken off the table and it's not keeping the flywheel going so that more projects can build and more people can join the community. That's what regen means to me. Are we working toward positive sum games together?
Right. So in the example of the NFT world, Rainbow Rules, you saw a bunch of NFT artists launching these projects, may or may not have artistic value, taking that money and basically taking it off chain for their own benefit. Whereas you were able to leverage 80% of that value to make a positive impact on other people's lives. That's pretty cool.
That, and what we've done is we've tried to make it so that Rainbow Rolls holders, which is about like 330-ish people who are like Sybil proof, not proof, but like it's 300 something individuals who've contributed this. I try to make sure that they get onto as many like allow lists and airdrop lists as possible, so that the community can kind of keep giving back to that initial donation.
Yeah, cool. So I'm curious what you're up to nowadays. I know you're still a ETHDenver steward, but I heard you're working on a new project that's focused on environmental action. So could you share a little bit more about Azos?
Sure. Yeah. In the same vein. So Azos is a stablecoin that we're building. It's kind of in the vein of MakerDAO, where instead of ETH and WBTC and USDC as collateral, we're using climate finance debt assets. So starting with carbon credits, green bonds, renewable energy certificates, also projects that work toward these types of things, like Klima. We're talking to Giveth about Give, like anything that is in the impact space, and then also any debt that can be tokenized that is some sort of public good. I've had some really good talks with Cubba Joseph about municipal bonds, and they're like focusing on like local solutions for local government, and allowing people to buy into it. And if we're able to use the DeFi mechanics and get people, degenerates, excited about like yield farming these things that help people on local levels, or when you expand beyond carbon credits to like water and air, biodiversity, soil, like the EBF6 equity, there's so much good that we can do without asking for handouts. So it's not like, oh, please come use this protocol. It's come use this DeFi protocol where you're hopefully going to make money farming yield, and the assets that are the target of this are benefiting X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, there's definitely a tension between the sort of do-gooder mentality of wanting to, philanthropic initiatives that use donated money to try to have a positive impact. But I do agree it's really powerful to shift the mindset from profit being an inherently problematic notion to profit being redirected toward positive impact. I think that's really powerful. And in the carbon markets, one of the things I've noticed is that there's a lot of project developers out there who want to go and take positive climate action. They want to go implement a carbon project or implement a water purification project, but they don't have access to capital. And so one of the things that excites me about Azos, and I think it's really cool what you guys are building, is the opportunity to unlock some capital for these small-scale project developers to go out and take a positive action, to have a positive impact on the planet.
And we've actually formed some really cool partnerships in Brazil, where this guy wants us to take $180 million worth of carbon credits, create a market, but then also use the profit and liquidity from the protocol to continue buying more land for conservation, to generate even more credits, to create this ecosystem where the protocol, which would then involve the local governments who are owning a piece of it because they're part of this protocol, are able to use our platform to buy up more land to generate more local wealth.
Yeah, and that's that regenerative flywheel that for you is so intrinsic to what it means to be a regen. got about 5 minutes left. I'm curious if you have any words of wisdom for people out in the audience. Maybe they didn't think of themselves as a regen, or you got into Web3 because they saw an opportunity to make a quick buck or to get exposed to some new technology. Do you have any thoughts or reflections about your journey that might be helpful as people are navigating this space and trying to figure out how they can contribute in a way that's aligned with their own values?
I'd, I think I'd like to talk about the regenerative Spork DAO flywheel and how just being here is part of this ecosystem of growth. So I'm also the treasurer for Spork DAO. So afterward, if you don't get the right amount of Spork, I'm the person that you would complain to. And my DMs are always open. So, but when you participate in ETHDenver, which is this fantastic global innovation festival that has been running since 2018 and even earlier, when you attend, when you speak, when you sponsor, when you BUIDL's the biggest help. When you invested in BV, you're contributing to helping ETHDenver be free. And I don't know if you guys all know this, but like at least 50% of the attendees are new every year. It's like, don't have a wallet, don't really understand how any of this works. And we want the barrier of entry to be as low as possible. You get them in the door. If somebody's first experience with crypto is pumped out fun and they are one of the 98% that do not have a positive experience with walking into that casino, what is the likelihood that they're going to come back and be a positive contributing member of the community? Like, not
Pretty low, I'd say.
yeah, like in addition to not having any money to contribute, they had a soured experience. The vast majority of people who come through ETHDenver have a first positive experience in this ecosystem. A lot of some of the teams that the BV invested in came back as sponsors. The BUIDLers end up becoming mentors. Attendees will come back as BUIDLers. And we've got a great graphic that I should have thought to throw up here. That would have been good. That actually, C-Bob, who's here, helped make that graphic. This flywheel of contribution that is like the core essence of what regenerative it means to me. And so participating in all of the different things that ETHDenver has to offer, participating in the Spork economy, that would be the first.
Yeah, interesting. So ETHDenver itself as an example of a regenerative flywheel. We have about 2 minutes left. I don't know if we have time for one question. Can we do one?
Yeah,
Anybody have a question in the audience? Oh, okay, that's fine. Here, you can take one. Any questions?
Yeah, you ran out of questions, Marcus?
Anybody?
All right, we have a taker. He's not a plant, I promise.
Hey, thanks for organizing this. This is my first time here.
Welcome.
You said something about shared car sharing can't work on Web3. Do you have explanation for that? Why it doesn't work yet?
Yeah, a bunch. The network effect required to build a rideshare in a specific location is like tens of millions of dollars of VC money that's just being thrown down the drain. And Uber and Lyft actually got a lot of their funding on the promise of autonomous. And so if you're saying, let's build a network on the backs of autonomous vehicles, like they didn't tell the drivers this when they were onboarding people with like, here's $100 to sign up, $200 to do your first few rides. So the network effect is really difficult to build. The one I'd want to focus on here then as a second example would be impatience. You guys are really impatient, like super impatient. Like a driver, if they have to go more than a mile, will cancel the ride. A passenger, if they have to wait more than 5 minutes, will cancel the ride. And it just like breaks the network. And so it has to be essentially a system of OTC deals constantly to grow this network. And then you get into like this PvP situation where drivers are competing with each other for, I don't know, eventually we'll see somebody will be able to do it. Maybe like a Uniswap, somebody who's got billions of dollars to burn and can just like loss lead until they've destroyed Uber or Lyft. I think that'd be probably the only way to do it. Thanks for that question. That was good. Okay, thank you all for coming. I'm 0x Joshua. This is Marcus Aurelius. Have a great ETHDenver.